Folks, I'm glad you joined us here at Curriculum Night for Lakota Ridge. Tonight, really what I'm going to do is give you an overview of your son or daughter's or your student's science class for their 7th grade year. On the table near the QR codes, you'll see a stack of these. This is what I'm basically going to go through to just give you an overview. It's going to be titled Mr. Pryor's Classroom Information. First thing that's really important to me in my rules and regulations is just number one. If you look at it, it kind of summarizes my point of view overall. Be nice to everyone. Ultimately, if you come in with a positive attitude, ready to learn and ready to kind of work together on tasks or solving situations, everybody comes together and everything works out. So rules and regulations, number one is be nice to everybody. And after that, it kind of follows in where you have a pencil for the day, you're in your seat when the bell rings, and you're just really ultimately ready. Each kid will be given 3 hall passes per quarter. Those hall passes are to leave, to go to the bathroom, to get a drink, to go get something out of the locker they may have forgotten. And ultimately, that is how we're running that on Team 7B. They will be given 3 passes per classroom per quarter. Consequences. If you look at the consequence section, I try to keep it in-house and solve all the problems within my classroom setting, and usually, ultimately, a conversation with the student takes care of that. But you will see there in consequences, they're lined out. Number one is a verbal warning. Just me communicating with the student, hey, your actions or your situation, you need to change it, work on it. They're more than welcome to give me their view on what happened, and then I'll give them my view on what happened, and then we'll work from there. Second thing might be an escalated one to a verbal warning where I have to have a discussion with them. So I might bring them in for a little bit of a lunch detention to just talk about the behavior, or I might take them into the hallway for a minute or two to just let it be out in the open as to what we need to correct. Ultimately, that's usually where it stops, but on occasion there might be a need to call home for a situation, whether it could be a positive or a negative. But if I'm involving home, I would ask for your help to try to work on the situation and get everybody lined up to be more conducive to the student activity. All school rules do apply in my classroom, and ultimately this is my own classroom, but I have to have the big picture view where rules apply that go basically big school picture. So within my room, verbal warning again, and if it has to escalate, I can take things to the office, but I try to keep it in-house like I mentioned before. Required material, ultimately I ask for one major thing is one dedicated binder to science, or at least a section in a big binder that's directly for science and science only. I do not like math stuff and language arts stuff and social studies mixed in with that, so just one binder specifically for science. Other things, I do believe that the student planner, and can you pan over here please, you will see on the student planner, this is where I write information for the kid to know per day. You will have a section of it that's dedicated to saying this is their homework or this is what's coming up for Friday. And you will also see the day-to-day is written on my board. Ultimately, it is the student's responsibility to write that down. They're 12, 13, 14 years old. I don't have time to check everybody's, but I do provide them the opportunity to have a place for their student planner in case they like to use that. If you look underneath required material, number 5 is a big one to me, a positive attitude towards learning. 22 years of doing this, I've realized that if you come in with a bright outlook and you generally love what you're doing, which I do, I love to teach science, that my positive attitude, I try to put that into my mix and allow other kids to feel really relaxed coming here to try to learn as much as they can while they're here. And my belief is that if you're nice to the folks and if they have a positive attitude, we can accomplish a lot more learning than we could if we did not have a positive outlook. You also see underneath required material textbooks. I do feel textbooks are important. I do think reading is important. But quite frankly, our books are really good, but I, being a 22-year veteran teacher, I feel like I know a lot more by using resources outside of the textbook world that we bring into the classroom. But we will use a textbook on occasion just because the absolute value of reading is extremely important, and our book series is good. Grading policy, I do follow the student handbook for late work. I do follow it for missing if you're absent or whatever. The school policy follows in my classroom. I do use Canvas quite a bit. You will notice here on 7B, social studies, math, language arts, and science, we're really all over the Canvas concept. And that will kind of allow a kid to access things from home if they are absent or if they've forgotten something from the school day. And I encourage you as a parent to really interact with your student on Canvas to see how it's being used. I know I use it the least on my team between my other teachers, and I know I use it a lot, so they use it even more than I do. So a lot of your questions or items you may need could be found through Canvas. Other things that you look at underneath my grading policy, your positive participation, that goes a long way. Not everybody can learn everything right away, but if you're giving me the effort I need, I'm very cool with that. And at the end of the quarter, if we need to bump up a grade, I use that positive participation as my way to kind of create a little bit of wiggle room to round up a grade. You'll also then notice there are questions of the week and current events. Every other week, your student will have a question of the week. It will be assigned on a Monday. It is directly related to our topic for that week, and then it will be due on that Friday, and that will count as 4 points. The next week, they will not have a question of the week. They will have a current event, also assigned on a Monday. It is an article related to any field of science that they choose. They may pick one out of a newspaper, off the internet, out of a Science World magazine, or different websites that I've provided. It is their choice. I do not give them the article. They find something of interest to them. It's assigned on a Monday, it's turned on Friday, and it's worth 4 points. So between question of the week or current event, they'll have one of those every other week. Another thing that is absolutely very important, weekly scientific vocabulary. We have 5 prefixes we get a week on Monday. They all related to Latin or Greek prefixes directly related to a field of science that we study here at Ridge. Those 5 prefixes will be given on a Monday, talked about as how they could apply to a science word. They will be on our quizzes whenever we have it, usually on a Friday. Those prefixes will be on the quiz, and they guaranteed count as points. You will notice that vocabulary, as you start to expand your vocabulary, learning becomes a lot easier. Word recognition using prefixes and suffixes. Every field of science, every language arts, every math, all of it has prefixes that are very important. So the weekly prefixes, pay attention to those. They will get about 35 a quarter or 5 a week. We also have a lot of various discussions through the class time. If a kid has an interest that's unrelated to anything, I like those questions because ultimately that allows me to let them share their interests, and then we can talk about a big picture. And ultimately, we may devote a day or two to something completely off topic just so we can go expand the views or the topics that these kids have interest in. You will also notice that at the very end of this, Mr. Pryor's classroom information is a thing referred to as a binder check. In your busy worlds, I'm sure you've noticed that the more organized you are, the more you can accomplish, the more you get done, and the less you forget. In my world, that binder, if you can organize that binder, you will notice that it is going to help you stay current, it's going to help you stay focused. And after you're done with the quarter, what I do at the end of the quarter as a last-ditch effort to get a bunch of easy points, I offer them 10 points for a binder check. And all they have to do is reproduce to me the items I have given them through the quarter. And if they've got all 10, it's a 10 out of 10. So right at the end of the quarter, it's a nice little bonus to help you keep your grade up. But for those of us that are unorganized, it doesn't help, it actually hurts. So I work with kids constantly. Ms. Bauer on our team is a super specialist at helping organize kids in their binders. But ultimately, your student, your son or daughter will know that as they become more organized, they become more proficient. More organized equals more efficient, which allows us to have more learning instead of looking for papers. It's right where you knew where to be. So that binder check there at the bottom, just keep in mind that every 9 weeks we will have a binder check right at the end of the quarter. That will be a 10-point pickup for that kid to put into their grade to really help them out at the end. Overall, I've been teaching 22 years. This is my 18th year at Ridge. I went to Ohio University, I have a degree in earth science and education from there, and then I have a master's from Miami University. And so what I teach is actually directly related to both of my majors in college. And as my knowledge grows, it even gets more fun to teach because I can bring things that are completely new in this ever-developing world that we live in and share it real time with kids. And my comfort level with teaching allows me to take things from outside and bring them in here with a pretty good ease, using kids' help, because like I said, their interests can become my interest, but I ask them to share, and that leads to the last thing. If they have questions, please tell your son or daughter or your student to come in with the question they may have and ask it. I love questions, even again, as I said, if it's off topic or not, I do not care, because ultimately it can lead to learning at some level, and the more we share about anything, I feel is a better way to learn. So that is how my classroom will run. And ultimately, if you do have questions, maybe refer to this sheet, and if you can't pick it up off the sheet, you're more than welcome to email me or just stop by right now while you're here at this open house and ask me that question. So thank you for your time, and thank you for joining us at Curriculum. Hello parents, it's now me again talking to you about what it looks like to be in the 7th, 8th grade compacted advanced science for your 7th grade student. To summarize what that means is your student is in the advanced track here at Lakota Ridge. So they are going to be taking their 7th and their 8th grade year of science all together with me during their 7th grade year. So they will have covered everything, that they would have gotten in the 2 years, they get it in one. When they leave here and go to the 8th grade, they'll most likely have Mr. Numbers or Mr. Lehman upstairs. They will be taking what is called CP Physical Science, and that course will count as a college credit, or as a high school credit. So when they are leaving Ridge, if they have successfully completed that class, they will have one science credit that will apply to their high school transcript and move forward with them from when they leave here, it will count. So ultimately, I ask that you have that conversation with your students so they are well aware of what a high school transcript is. Being in 7th grade, they may not understand the competitive nature or the overall nature of what a transcript should look like, and that your grades count and it leads to a GPA, which ultimately does filter in, even though they're only in 8th grade, that will filter into their class rank, which, as all of us would know, as you get a little older into your junior and senior year, your class rank has a little bit of determining factor of where you might settle out in your college opportunities. So please have that conversation with your student that it counts on their high school transcript once they are in 8th grade. They will not be taking 8th grade science. They will be taking a course called CP, or physical science, which does count for their 9th grade year and will get them one high school credit.